Kevin Wagaman, founder of Momentors LLC. This is Friday Freestyle. Here we are, here we grow. This is going to be longer. This isn't going to be a short. This is going to be an introduction to our discussion on negotiations. And for those in the One to Grow On community, welcome. If you're not in the One to Grow On community, visit momentorsllc.com. You can see how you can join. This is something that I've got a lot of experience with, the topic of negotiations, specifically with creating options and also identifying levels of stress and turbulence in negotiations and not letting that deter you or detract you or sidetrack you or get you in trouble in negotiations, because sometimes our emotions get out of control, sometimes our stress level gets really high, and then we can react in a way that isn't conducive to solid negotiations. And I mean, it happens in life. I mean, whether or not you're involved in something that you would formally call a negotiation, you negotiate something every single day. Most everybody does. With our spouse, with our kids, with our friends, with our families, probably at work. Some of you negotiate real estate transactions. Some of you negotiate business deals. Whatever it is, there's negotiations all around. It's just everywhere. It's just coming to agreement on things when there potentially are different sides to an equation. How do we get together? How do we come together? How do we come up with something that, in a lot of cases, hopefully works, where value is created and delivered to both sides. Now, there are some types of negotiations, what we call zero sum or win-lose, where there's only a certain amount of value and both sides are coming at it from trying to claim as much value for themselves as possible, and whatever value is claimed by me is not available to the other side. That's zero sum. And then there's other types of negotiations, which is really where we like to live, and that is you're still trying to claim value, but you're also trying to create value. So in other words, through the negotiation itself, we may come up with options that some things are really important to me, some things are important to the other side. And is there something else, is it, instead of just pulling for more slices of the pie or the pizza that I'm going to get versus what you get, but is there a way that we can create more pizza? And through our negotiations, through our partnership. And the beautiful thing about that is if we can at least come at it from that perspective, then we have a better chance of creating not only value, but long-term relationships with people we might be negotiating with in the future, or strategic alliances or partnerships. And that's really what we want to do. Now, you don't want to go into a negotiation where somebody else is playing zero sum and you're trying to play more of a win-win, is not really the right term, but the value creation. Because what you don't want to do is, if someone's just attacking from the other side, that you start trying to go back and forth and create value. Sometimes it's just not possible, and you got to play the zero sum game. So this is not something where you want to be weak in the negotiation, but you want to identify when it's appropriate to go this route versus the zero sum. Let's get as much as we can, and who cares about the other side? Which again, sometimes happens. But for now, we're going to talk more about what we would call value creation, a collaborative type of negotiation where I call it picnic, right? So this is a strategy that I use because I used to get stressed out during negotiations. But I think in my experience in leading companies and coaching people, if you have a process, you can minimize the stress, you can minimize the turbulence that you have, that sometimes, if we let it get out of control, can then come out in a way that is not conducive to what we're trying to accomplish. So we call it PICNIC, P-I-C-N-I-C, and P is for prepare better than anyone. The more prepared you are going into a negotiation, the lower your stress is going to be, and the better your chance of creating something in a win-lose area of value for you or your client or whatever you're negotiating for. And the better prepared you'll be able to create value and look at things from different angles when you're looking at that potential collaborative approach. And so preparation is so key. Ask questions, do the research, have preliminary conversations with whoever you're negotiating against, or for, or both. I is identify common ground with the person you're negotiating against, or with, if you're looking at it collaboratively. Identify common ground. ask good questions, establish a relationship, generate some rapport, get the other person to where you guys like each other. And then from there, you're going to be able to generate that relationship and solve things, because the C is for confront challenges as they are part of an agreement that we're trying to come to, not confront each other. We confront each other. Again, we get back to the emotional side of things. Generally speaking, sometimes it's a strategy, right? Sometimes you ratchet up the energy, ratchet up the intensity, and you may intimidate the other side. And again, if you're not looking for collaboration and you're just looking to win value, then sometimes that's appropriate. But generally speaking, if I'm going to have a productive outcome in a long-term relationship, I'm not coming at you on the other side of the table. I am addressing these things that we're trying to solve together. This is the challenge that we're trying to solve in the agreement, and how are we going to be able to come up with something that's going to address those challenges, right? So that is the C, confront challenges, not each other. N is negotiate from a position of strength. Now, this sounds obvious, and Harvard Negotiation Project did a lot of great work on this, and you can go to my website and I actually have something linked there that I modified from what they developed, and that is some questions you can ask and some things you can do to prepare, so you not only understand your position as a position of strength, but you also are able to start to identify what the other position, the strength or lack thereof of the other side of the table, so you can see really what approaches are going to be the most effective. So negotiate from a position of strength, and generally speaking, through negotiations, it's good to allow the other side insight into what your strength of position is, generally speaking, not always. So that's an N. So pick Nick and I. The next I is isolate anything that is a continued challenge, or isolate remaining issues. So as you negotiate, you're going to come to terms on things, right? Hopefully, if it's going in the right direction, some things you're going to get agreement on. Well, now I want to isolate what's left, because what I don't want to have happen is psychologically, if we've solved some issues, I don't want to have it appear to be an overwhelming thing. So I'm going to create an easy, maybe even a visual, or at a minimum, take some notes on here's what we've already agreed to, and here are the things, here are the minor points, hopefully, or here are the remaining points, that these are the only things we need to come to terms on now. And yes, it's part of the bigger picture, but look at all the stuff we've already come up with that we both agree to. So let's kind of let's pull these out of the overall deal, so it makes the overall negotiation seem less overwhelming, because it should be at this point. You've got some agreement so far. PIC and isolate the remaining issues. And then the final C, I got two for you on the final C. One is create options. Great negotiators create options, especially when you're dealing with power type personalities. You can really butt heads with somebody if they're a high D type personality, or a dominant type personality, a power personality. Power personality's greatest fear, according to DISC research, is being taken advantage of. So when you create options for somebody as part of your negotiation, then you reduce the chance of them feeling like they're being taken advantage of. Creating options is one of the great strategies of some of the best negotiators on the planet, and so that's one aspect of the final C. And then finally, close the matter with clarity. That's why when I coach people that utilize contracts, I always talk about making sure that the agreement is reduced to contract immediately, even through the negotiation, the idea that plays out in the contract itself. That way we close the matter with clarity. There's nothing left undone. If we're doing it on external, just cocktail napkins, etc., then you might find that once we get to agreement, well, there wasn't really agreement because we haven't identified all the points. So close the matter with clarity and make sure that everyone's on the same page with all the terms that are being negotiated. And look, this can get really complex. I'm working with somebody right now strategically that has a multi-level complex negotiation with different business functions, and it can be super complex. And the questions are like, who do I talk to first? And how strongly do I approach this, considering that I want to have great relationships here? And what are some of the external stakeholders I need to get involved in? How do I bring all this stuff together? So it can be super complex like that, or it can be simple. Like I read to my daughter's class today, and part of the negotiation with my daughter was, what books am I going to read? And she won that negotiation, by the way. I read 4 Elsa books and then 1 book that I wanted to read, Frozen. And 4 Elsa books was what she wanted, and she was dressed up as a princess, and oh, it was so amazing. Sat on my lap, and I got to read to her class. It was so much fun. But she won that negotiation because she was a lot stronger than I was on what books we were going to read. And so it could be as simple as that, or where to have dinner, or all kinds of different things. We're always negotiating, but when you take the time, go through Picnic, you can write it out, PICNIC, and just think through each one of these things. How am I prepared? Have I done this? How am I going to identify common ground? What are some questions I'm going to ask to build relationship with the other side? Just kind of use it as a strategy. And you can also visit our website for another resource that I have there, momentorsllc.com. And if you go to resources and then click on preparing for negotiation, I've got something for you too there. Hope this was helpful. Go get them.